Rain slid down the cracked pavement in crooked rivers, glowing faintly under the tired yellow streetlights. It was close to midnight, the kind of hour when the world grew quiet enough for fears to whisper louder than thoughts. Emma walked quickly, clutching her old coat tighter around her thin frame. She was 32, a single mother who had learned long ago that survival meant keeping her head down and her steps steady. Her shoes slapped the wet ground as she hurried home from another late shift at the diner. The weight of exhaustion pulled at her shoulders, but she never let it slow her down. Home waited at the end of the street, small, broken in places, but safe. At least, it was supposed to be safe. The wind carried strange sounds that night. Not the usual scurry of rats in the alleys or the groan of rusted gutters. This sound was softer. A whisper. A cry. Emma froze. Heart thudding. She turned her head, peering into the dim outline of the woods that pressed against the edge of the neighborhood. A place she always avoided. Old trees leaned like watchmen, their black shapes bending in the shadows. There it was again. A sob, small, fragile. Emma's chest tightened. She knew that sound every mother did. A child crying. Her tired legs moved before her mind could stop them. She stepped off the road, shoes sinking into damp earth as she pushed toward the woods. The air changed as soon as she entered, colder, thicker, as though the trees themselves breathed around her. Branches shifted, though the wind had stilled. "Hello?" she called softly, her voice trembling. "Is someone there?" Silence answered. Then a shuffle, a quick rustle of leaves, and finally, a figure. Emma gasped. A little girl stood between two trees, barefoot in the mud. Her thin white nightgown clung to her shivering body. Strands of tangled hair stuck to her tear-streaked face. She couldn't have been more than 7. Her eyes wide, bright, too old for her age, locked on Emma, with a mixture of fear and relief. Emma's heart broke. "Sweetheart, are you lost?" The girl didn't speak at first. She only stared, clutching her own arms, trembling. Then, with a tiny voice barely stronger than the rustling leaves, she whispered, "He'll find me." Emma knelt, lowering herself to the child's level, keeping her voice calm even though her pulse raced. "It's all right. You're safe now. Who's going to find you?" The girl's lips quivered, but she didn't answer. Instead, she stumbled forward, collapsing into Emma's arms with surprising trust. Her small body was ice-cold, as though she'd been standing in the rain for hours. Emma wrapped her coat around the girl, holding her close. "Come on, let's get you warm. We'll figure this out." But as she turned back toward the street, a sound rumbled from deep within the forest. Low, guttural, like an animal growling, but too large, too heavy to belong to any dog she'd ever heard. Emma froze. The little girl stiffened in her arms. The growl came again, closer this time. The hairs on Emma's neck rose, every instinct screaming at her to run. She clutched the girl tighter, whispering, "It's okay. I've got you." Though her own voice betrayed the fear tightening her throat. She forced her legs to move, stumbling back onto the road, her shoes slipping on wet leaves. Behind her, the forest seemed alive, branches snapping, shadows shifting, something pacing them just beyond sight. Emma didn't dare look back until she reached the glow of the nearest streetlight. Only then did she turn, breath ragged, clutching the girl close. The trees stood silent now, still, watching. For a moment, she thought she saw them, 2 glowing eyes, golden and unblinking, staring from the darkness. Then they blinked out, swallowed by the night. Emma's chest heaved. She whispered more to herself than the child. "It was just my imagination. Just..." the dark playing tricks. But when she glanced down at the girl, the child was staring into the woods with the same fear Emma had tried to bury. Her small hands clutched Emma's coat tighter, and her lips moved soundlessly before she whispered one chilling word: Daddy. Emma's world had always been predictable, even in its hardships, work, bills, late nights, early mornings. But as she hurried down the road with the trembling child in her arms, she knew something had shifted. She had stepped into a story she didn't understand. A shadow now followed her, one she couldn't explain or escape. Emma barely slept that night. The little girl lay curled up on her old couch, wrapped in blankets, her damp hair spread like a halo across the pillow. Even in sleep, her face held traces of fear, her lips twitching as if whispering words. Emma couldn't hear. Emma sat in the worn armchair nearby, watching the child breathe. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw them again, those glowing eyes in the woods. She told herself it wasn't real. Exhaustion played tricks. Shadows, animals, the storm. But deep down, she knew the truth was stranger. She finally drifted into uneasy sleep just before dawn. But it wasn't restful. She dreamed of trees closing in, branches curling like claws. She ran through endless woods, something following her, its growl low and steady, like thunder rolling under the earth. And then eyes. Bright, golden, piercing through the dark, looking straight into her soul. She woke with a start, heart hammering, breath shallow. The girl was still there, sleeping soundly, but Emma felt no relief. Something had changed. Her apartment, usually quiet at this hour, felt heavy, the air thick, pressing against her chest. She shook it off, forcing herself into routine. Breakfast, coffee, bread toasted until it almost burned. But even the hum of the toaster sounded strange, too loud, like static in her ears. When the girl woke, she barely spoke. She just sat at the table, swinging her thin legs, staring at the door as if waiting for it to open. Emma tried to smile, tried to sound normal. We'll figure out where you live. Maybe the police can help. The child's eyes snapped to hers sharp, almost warning. No police. Emma frowned. Sweetheart, they can help us. No. The girl's voice was high. Panicked. She clutched Emma's wrist with surprising strength. If they come, he'll come too. Emma felt a chill crawl down her spine. Who? Your father. The girl's lips pressed tight. She didn't answer, but her little hands trembled as she let go. That afternoon, Emma walked to the corner store with the girl at her side. The streets seemed normal: kids on bikes, the mailman dragging his tired bag, neighbors watering their lawns. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow seemed too deep, every sound stretched thin. The bell above the shop door rang as they entered. The owner, Mrs. Jensen, gave Emma a distracted smile, but paused when she saw the child. Her eyes narrowed, lips parting as if she wanted to speak, then shut again quickly. She looked away, fumbling with the register. Emma noticed something wrong. Mrs. Jensen shook her head too fast. No, nothing at all. But her hands trembled as she bagged Emma's groceries. As Emma turned to leave, she swore she heard the older woman mutter under her breath, barely louder than a whisper, "You shouldn't keep her." Emma froze, blood rushing to her ears. What did you say? Mrs. Jensen looked startled, almost afraid. Nothing, just, be careful, Emma. The walk home was worse. The streets felt emptier, the air heavier. Once, Emma thought she heard footsteps behind them. She spun around, but no one was there, just the long stretch of cracked sidewalk and the whisper of wind moving through the trees. The little girl clung to her hand. He's close, she whispered. Emma's chest tightened. Who? But the girl just shook her head, eyes darting toward the woods again. That night, the unease grew stronger. Emma sat by the window, staring out into the dark. The streetlight buzzed and flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. She tried to distract herself with the news on the old TV, but even that betrayed her. The screen crackled, the picture bending, a voice breaking through the static low, distorted, almost a growl. Her breath caught as she heard words form through the noise. Mine. She's mine. Emma lunged forward, clicking the TV off. The silence that followed was worse. She could hear her own blood rushing in her ears. She checked the locks 3 times, before settling the girl back onto the couch. But when she pulled the blanket over her, the girl stirred and whispered, "He'll come when the moon is high." Emma's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" she asked softly, but the child had already slipped back into sleep, leaving Emma alone with her pounding heart. The hours dragged. Midnight came again, and with it, the unease thickened. Emma sat in the armchair, fighting sleep, her body tense as if waiting for something. And then she heard it soft at first, almost like leaves, rustling. But there were no leaves in her living room. It was a whisper. A voice. From the corner of the room. She turned sharply. Nothing. Just shadows pooling where the lamplight didn't reach. She told herself she was imagining it, but then it came again, clearer, closer. A man's voice, deep and steady. "She's not yours." Emma jumped to her feet, knocking the lamp over. The bulb shattered, plunging half the room into darkness. The girl stirred on the couch, mumbling in her sleep, but didn't wake. Emma's heart hammered as she grabbed the nearest thing she could use as a weapon, an umbrella, leaning against the door. Her hand shook so badly she could barely hold it. The whisper came one last time, curling through the dark like smoke. "She's mine." Emma spun toward the sound, breath ragged, but saw nothing, only the curtain fluttering, though the window was shut tight. And then a knock. Slow, heavy, against the front door. And somewhere in the woods, something or someone was watching. Emma froze, her entire body stiff, the umbrella still clutched in her trembling hands. The knock came again, 3 hard strikes that rattled the door on its hinges. The girl's eyes flew open, wide and knowing. She sat up, voice shaking as she whispered a single word that made Emma's blood turn cold. "Daddy." The knock came again, slow, heavy, like the beat of a drum warning of something terrible approaching. Emma stood frozen in the living room, the broken lamp at her feet, the umbrella clutched like a sword she didn't know how to use. Her heart pounded against her ribs. The girl on the couch whispered again, her small voice trembling. "Daddy." Emma's throat went dry. She stared at the door, her breath shallow. Whoever stood there wasn't just a man. She didn't know how she knew it, but the truth pressed down on her chest like weight. She couldn't lift. The 3rd knock shook the thin walls of her apartment. Then silence. Emma's hand moved without thought, reaching for the doorknob. Every part of her screamed not to open it. But something deeper, a strange pull she couldn't explain, drove her forward. When she turned the lock and pulled the door open, the night itself seemed to rush inside. He stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, filling the doorway with a presence that made the room feel too small. His hair was dark, damp from the mist outside. His clothes clung to his frame as if even the fabric obeyed him. But it was his eyes that froze Emma in place, amber, glowing faintly even under the weak hallway light. They locked onto her, sharp and unyielding, and for a moment she felt stripped bare, as though he could see straight into her soul. "Where is she?" His voice was deep, steady, carrying a growl beneath the words. Not loud, but commanding. The kind of voice that allowed no refusal. The girl rushed from the couch and ran to him. "Daddy!" she cried, clutching his leg. Relief shone in her eyes, but fear lingered too, as though she wasn't sure what his presence meant. Emma's hand tightened, around the umbrella, though her arms trembled. "Who are you?" she demanded, trying to keep her voice firm. Why was she alone in the woods? His gaze shifted to her. For a second, the world seemed to fall away. The sound of the city outside disappeared. The clock on the wall, the hum of the refrigerator, all of it faded until there was only him. Something about him pulled at her chest. Wild and magnetic. Dangerous, yes, but impossible to ignore. "She is mine," he said simply, his hand resting on his daughter's hair. The words were both claim and warning. Emma swallowed hard, forcing her feet to stay planted. She was freezing, terrified. She would have died if I hadn't found her. His jaw tightened. A muscle flickered in his cheek, as if her words cut deeper than she realized. His eyes, still locked on her, softened almost imperceptibly. "And yet, you kept her safe." The weight of his gaze made her chest tighten. Heat spread across her skin, despite the cold draft rushing through the open door. It wasn't attraction. Not in the ordinary sense. It was something older, rawer, like instinct waking inside her. Emma shook her head, breaking free of the strange pull. "You didn't answer me. Who are you?" For a moment, silence stretched. Then he stepped inside, his presence swallowing the small room. He looked at her the way a predator looked at prey, not with cruelty, but with certainty, as if whatever he wanted he could take. "I am no one you should have met," he said finally. His voice was quieter now, but the growl beneath it was unmistakable. "And yet, here we are." Emma's breath caught. She wanted to demand more, to tell him to leave, to protect herself, but the words stuck in her throat. Her eyes kept tracing him against her will, the way he moved with unnatural grace, the way the shadows seemed to cling to him, the way his presence filled every corner of the room. The girl tugged at his sleeve. "She helped me, Daddy. Don't be mad." Something shifted in his expression. He crouched down, pressing his large hand gently against his daughter's cheek. "I am not mad," he said softly, though his eyes flicked back to Emma as he spoke. "Not with her." Emma felt her stomach twist. The way he looked at her, grateful, curious, and yet dangerous, set her pulse racing. She told herself it was fear, but fear alone didn't explain the warmth rising in her chest, the strange ache beneath her skin. He rose to his full height again, towering over her. "You shouldn't have taken her," he said, though his voice carried no anger, only certainty. "But you did, which means—" His eyes narrowed slightly, studying her as though searching for an answer. "Which means fate has already marked you." Emma's knees weakened. She clutched the back of the chair to steady herself. "Marked me? What does that even mean?" He stepped closer, and she could smell him now. Earth, pine, something wild and untamed. His nearness made it hard to breathe. He leaned down, his words brushing her skin like the edge of a storm. "It means you're part of this now," he whispered. "Whether you want to be or not." Emma's breath shook. She wanted to tell him to leave, to take his daughter, and vanish back into whatever shadowed world he belonged to. But she didn't. Instead, she found herself staring into his amber eyes, caught in something she couldn't name. For a moment, the silence between them pulsed with unspoken words. Heavy and electric. Then he stepped back, breaking the connection. The air seemed to lighten, though Emma's chest still heaved as if she'd run miles. "I owe you," he said, his voice low, almost reluctant. For keeping her safe. But debts in my world are never simple. Emma's heart thudded. She wanted to ask what world he meant, but fear kept her silent. He reached for his daughter's hand, guiding her gently toward the door. But just before stepping out, he turned back. His gaze locked with Emma's once more, fierce and unyielding. "Stay away from the woods," he said. "Stay away from me." But his eyes betrayed him. Beneath the warning, something lingered, something that said he didn't entirely want her to obey. And then he was gone. Swallowed by the night. Emma stood in the silence he left behind, her chest rising and falling too quickly. Her home was hers again, yet it felt emptier, as if his presence had carved a space that refused to be filled. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest. She should have felt only relief. But instead she felt a dangerous mix of fear and longing. She had looked into the eyes of something not human. Something she should run from. Yet all she wanted was to see him again. The morning after he left. Emma tried to pretend life could return to normal. She cleaned the living room, picking up the shattered lamp, scrubbing the muddy footprints the little girl had left across the floor. She forced herself into routine, making coffee, feeding the cat that always wandered to her back step, folding laundry she had left untouched for days. But no matter how many ordinary things she did, the memory of the man at her door clung to her like smoke. His amber eyes, his voice, low and rough, warning her away while pulling her closer. She told herself she would forget. She had to. He was dangerous. His world was dangerous. The girl was gone now, safe with her father. That should have been the end. Yet it wasn't. That night, Emma dreamed again. She was standing in the woods, the trees bending inward, their branches reaching like claws. A howl split the night, long and mournful, shaking the air around her. She turned, heart racing, and saw him there. The Alpha. His eyes glowed. But his expression was not anger, it was hunger, longing. As though she was the one thing he couldn't allow himself to have. When she woke, her sheets were damp with sweat. Her heart pounding so hard she pressed her hand to her chest. It was just a dream, she told herself. Just her mind replaying what she had seen. But that morning she found claw marks on the outside of her window. Deep, long scratches gouged into the wood. Her breath caught. No one could have reached that high without a ladder. No one human. She tried to ignore it. She went to work, taking her usual shift at the diner. The clang of dishes, the smell of fried eggs and burnt coffee, the chatter of regulars. These things usually grounded her. But today she couldn't focus. Every time the bell above the door jingled, her eyes darted up, expecting to see him standing there, broad and commanding, his gaze pinning her in place. But it wasn't him. Not at first. A man came in near the end of her shift, tall, thin, with a strange way of moving, almost too smooth, like a shadow gliding across the floor. He sat at the counter, but didn't order. His eyes sharp, pale, inhuman, watched her as she poured coffee for another customer. Emma's skin prickled. She forced herself to ask, "Can I help you?" The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You've seen him." Emma froze. "I don't know what you mean." The man leaned closer, his voice a hiss. "Stay away from him, or you'll regret it." Before she could respond, he stood and walked out, the bell jingling softly behind him. Emma's hands shook so badly she spilled the coffee she was holding. That evening, as she walked home, the street seemed emptier than usual. The shadows stretched longer, darker, as though the sun itself was hiding from something. Every step she took echoed, though the pavement should have swallowed the sound. Halfway home, she heard it a growl. Low, deep, Rolling out of the alley beside her, Emma froze. A shape moved in the darkness, too large to be a stray dog. The sound grew louder, vibrating in her bones. Her heart slammed in her chest. She backed away, fumbling with her keys. The growl followed her. Closer now, heavy footsteps padding against the concrete. And then out of nowhere, two golden eyes flared in the dark. Emma gasped. But before she could move, a car sped past, its headlights cutting through the alley. For a split second, she saw it huge, dark-furred, crouched low. Not a dog. Not anything she had ever seen. Then it was gone. The alley empty, silent, as though nothing had been there at all. Emma stumbled the rest of the way home, slamming her door shut and locking it twice. That night she couldn't sit still. She paced the apartment, every sound magnified, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the old floorboards. She checked the locks again, then the windows. She kept telling herself she was safe. But when she sat by the window, staring out into the night, she saw movement near the edge of the woods. A figure, tall, broad, standing perfectly still, watching her building. Emma's breath hitched. She pressed her hand against the glass, unable to look away. She knew it was him, the Alpha. She couldn't explain how, but every part of her recognized his presence. For a moment she swore his eyes glowed, catching the faint light. He didn't move. Didn't come closer. Just watched. Her chest rose and fell too fast, torn between fear and something else, something she couldn't name. And then, as quickly as he appeared, he vanished back into the trees. The next day, Emma told herself she had to let it go. She had to. Whatever world he belonged to, it wasn't hers. She was a single mother, a diner waitress, someone who fought hard just to keep the lights on. She couldn't afford danger. She couldn't afford him, but danger didn't ask permission. That evening, as she walked home again, the air shifted. The street was too quiet, the houses too still. A chill moved over her skin. She heard footsteps behind her. Turning quickly, she saw the thin man from the diner. His pale eyes gleamed unnaturally in the fading light. "I warned you," he said softly, his smile cruel. "You should have listened." Emma's heart pounded. "Stay away from me." He tilted his head, stepping closer. "But you're already marked. That means you belong to him, or to us. Either way, your life is no longer your own." Her legs trembled, but she forced herself to stand tall. "I don't belong to anyone." The man's smile widened. "We'll see about that." He moved toward her, too fast, too fluid. Emma stumbled back, fear clawing up her throat. And then another sound, a growl deeper and louder than before. The pale man froze, his expression twisting into a snarl. From the shadows behind Emma, golden eyes blazed. The Alpha stepped forward, his presence filling the street like a storm breaking open. Emma's breath caught as her fear, tangled with something else, relief, longing, confusion. She didn't understand why, but she knew one thing for certain. The world she had fought to keep normal was gone. The supernatural had found her, and there was no going back. The street was frozen in silence. Emma stood between two forces she could not understand. The pale-eyed stranger glared at the Alpha, his lips pulled back in a sneer. The Alpha's golden eyes glowed like fire in the dark, his shoulders squared, his body radiating raw power. Emma couldn't move. Her heart thudded so hard it hurt. The pale man stepped back, his voice low but sharp. "You can't protect her forever." His eyes flicked to Emma, and a smile twisted across his face. "She's already part of this, whether she wants it or not." Then, in the blink of an eye, He was gone, vanishing into the shadows, as though the night had swallowed him whole. Emma let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The Alpha turned to her slowly. His presence was overwhelming, the kind of strength that filled the air around him, pressing against her chest. For a long moment he said nothing. He just looked at her, his gaze sharp and unreadable. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he finally said. His voice was deep, rough, as if each word carried weight. Emma swallowed hard. Who was that? What did he mean? His jaw tightened. He looked away, as if fighting with himself. Someone you don't need to know. Someone who won't touch you again. That's not an answer. Her voice trembled, but she forced herself to stand firm. I deserve to know why this is happening. Why me? His eyes snapped back to hers. For a second, something flickered there, something like pain. Then he shook his head. You should stay away from me. That's the only way you'll stay safe. But even as he said the words, he didn't step back. Neither did she. They walked in silence until they reached her building. The street lamps flickered overhead. The shadows moving strangely in the corners of her vision dotted her door. She hesitated. Will he come back? She asked softly. The Alpha studied her for a moment. His voice was low when he answered. If he does, he'll regret it. Something about the way he said it, steady, certain, made her feel safer than she should have. Emma unlocked the door, but before stepping inside, she turned to him. I never thanked you for saving me. He gave a short shake of his head. You don't need to thank me. Still, the air between them shifted. She could feel it, an invisible pull, like the gravity of a star pulling her closer. Her chest tightened, her breath shallow. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, he was gone. One moment there, the next a blur of motion. Vanishing into the night. Emma stood in the doorway for a long time, staring into the shadows. The next few days were a blur. Emma tried to bury herself in routine, serving coffee, cleaning tables, folding laundry, making lists for groceries. But nothing felt the same. She kept glancing over her shoulder, listening for footsteps that weren't there, waiting for golden eyes to appear in the dark. And sometimes they did. Late at night, she would catch a glimpse of him across the street, watching. Not moving, not coming closer, just there, like a sentinel. And though she told herself she should be afraid, she wasn't. She felt safe. Protected. And that scared her more than the danger itself. One evening, she heard a soft knock at her door. Her chest tightened. She knew it was him before she even looked. When she opened the door, the Alpha stood there. He looked different in the warm glow of her apartment, less like a creature of the woods, more like a man carrying a weight too heavy for one person. Can I come in? He asked. She hesitated only a moment before stepping aside. Inside, the silence stretched. He stood near the window, his large frame almost too big for the small space. She noticed how his hands flexed at his sides, as though holding himself back. Why are you here? She asked quietly. His eyes met hers, steady but troubled. To make sure you're safe. You've already done that, she said. More than once. But you won't tell me why. He let out a low breath. Because if you know, it will destroy the life you have left. And I don't want to be the one who takes that from you. Something inside Emma softened, even as confusion twisted tighter in her chest. You talk like I don't have a choice. He stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the faint scar along his jaw, the flecks of amber in his eyes. You don't, he said softly. Not anymore. Her pulse raced. The air between them felt charged, alive, as though the world itself held its breath. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The attraction was undeniable, something raw and dangerous, something she couldn't explain. Finally, he stepped back, his voice rough. "I shouldn't be here." But Emma's voice came out before she could stop it. "Then why are you?" The question hung between them, thick with meaning. After he left, Emma couldn't sleep. Her body hummed with restless energy, her thoughts circling around him like moths around a flame. And then, near midnight, something woke her. A sound outside, heavy, steady, not like the usual city noises. Heart pounding, she crept to the window. The street below was empty. But near the woods something moved. At first, she thought it was him again, watching. But the figure was larger. The way it moved was not human. It was too fluid, too powerful. And then she saw it clearly. A wolf. Not the kind she'd seen in books or movies. This one was massive, its fur dark as night, its eyes glowing like burning coals. Emma pressed a hand to her mouth, trying not to make a sound. The creature turned its head toward her building, and for one terrible moment, its gaze locked with hers. Her knees almost buckled. But then from the shadows another wolf appeared. This one she knew. Golden eyes gleamed, fierce and unyielding. The alpha. Emma's breath caught. She gripped the windowsill, unable to look away. Two wolves, facing each other. One was a nightmare. The other, the man who had saved her. And in that moment, the truth crashed over her. He wasn't just strong. He wasn't just dangerous. He wasn't just a man. He was a werewolf. Emma's hands shook as she gripped the windowsill. Her breath came in sharp, shallow bursts, fogging the glass as her wide eyes stayed fixed on the scene below. Two wolves stood facing each other at the edge of the woods. One dark, monstrous, its eyes glowing red, was a nightmare made flesh. The other, golden-eyed and powerful, was terrifying in a different way. She knew those eyes. She had seen them in her dreams, in her doorway, watching her across the street. The alpha. Emma pressed her fist against her mouth to stifle a cry. Her mind refused to believe what her eyes saw, but deep inside, she already knew the truth. He wasn't human. He never had been. The two wolves circled, the night air trembling with their low growls. Then, with a sudden blur of movement, they clashed. Teeth snapped, claws tore against fur. The sound was brutal bone against bone, a storm of snarls and yelps that echoed through the street. Emma stumbled back from the window, her heart hammering so violently it made her chest ache. She wanted to hide, to pretend she hadn't seen, to erase the image from her mind, but part of her couldn't turn away. Drawn by something stronger than fear, she pressed her palms against the glass again. Her eyes locked on the golden wolf as he pushed back the dark one, his body moving with feral strength. Every strike, every leap carried purpose, protecting, defending. For a moment, she felt safe again, until the darker wolf turned its burning eyes on her window. Emma gasped, stumbling back. The creature snarled, as if promising her it wasn't done. Then, with a last vicious lunge, it vanished into the night woods, shadows swallowing it whole. The golden wolf stood alone, chest heaving, his fur streaked with blood that was not entirely his own. He lifted his head, and their eyes met across the distance. Emma froze. Her breath caught. And then, before her very eyes, the golden wolf began to change. The shift was both graceful and horrifying. The beast's shape rippled, bones shifting beneath the skin, fur shrinking into flesh. Limbs lengthened, paws turned to hands. Within moments, the wolf was gone, and in its place stood the man. The alpha. His broad chest rose and fell with each heavy breath, his skin damp with sweat. Blood streaked across his arms. His eyes still glowed faintly in the dark. Emma stumbled back from the window, her legs weak. She clutched the edge of the table, Every part of her trembling dot, it was true. The impossible was real. He was a werewolf. Minutes passed before there was a knock at her door. Emma's body went cold. She didn't need to look to know who it was. The knock came again, firmer this time. Emma. His voice carried through the door, low and rough, as though his throat still burned from the fight. Open the door. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. When she didn't answer, the voice came again, softer now. Please. Her hand trembled as she reached for the knob. Every instinct screamed at her not to, but some deeper pull, something she couldn't name, forced her to turn it. The door swung open. He stood there, blood on his skin, shadows in his eyes. His broad frame filled the doorway, his presence overwhelming. Emma's breath caught. You shouldn't have seen that, he said, his voice low. Her chest tightened. But I did. For a long moment they stared at each other. His jaw clenched as though he was fighting some inner war. Finally, he stepped inside. The silence between them was heavy. Emma's eyes flicked to his arms. The cuts along his skin already closing, healing too fast. She swallowed hard. What are you? She whispered. He looked at her, pain flickering across his features. Something I wish I wasn't. Her hands tightened around the fabric of her shirt. A werewolf. He didn't deny it. Her throat felt dry. And that? Thing tonight? An enemy, he said simply. His voice was sharp, final, as though the word itself carried a weight too great to explain. Emma shook her head. This isn't real. It can't be. But when her eyes met his, she knew it was. Every dream, every shadow, every warning, it had all led here. He stepped closer. I tried to keep you out of this. I tried to stay away. Emma's breath hitched as his nearness pulled at her in ways she didn't understand. She wanted to step back, to escape the gravity of him. But her feet wouldn't move. Why me? She whispered. Why are they after me? His jaw tightened. Because you're marked. Her body went still. Marked? What does that mean? He looked away, as though the truth was too dangerous to say aloud. Emma's pulse quickened. Tell me. But he didn't. The silence between them grew unbearable. Her heart ached with fear, but underneath it pulsed something worse: betrayal. He had been watching her, saving her, protecting her. She had let herself trust him, even when every instinct warned against it. She had felt drawn to him, bound by something she couldn't explain. And all this time, he had been hiding what he really was. Her voice broke as she whispered, You should have told me. He flinched as though the words cut him. His eyes met hers, golden and fierce. If I told you, you'd run. And I couldn't let that happen. Emma's chest tightened. Fear twisted with anger. Anger twisted with longing. Nothing made sense. Nothing felt safe anymore. She shook her head, stepping back. You've been lying to me. His voice roughened. Not lying, protecting. Her eyes burned, not with tears but with fire. There's a difference. The space between them stretched, sharp as a blade. For the first time, Emma wasn't sure if he was her savior, or the danger she had been warned about all along. The night stretched heavy after the truth spilled open. Emma couldn't stop replaying what she had seen: his body breaking and reforming. Wolf to man, man to wolf. The image lived behind her eyelids, raw and terrifying, yet something inside her refused to turn away. She sat at her kitchen table, her arms wrapped tight around herself. Across from her, he stood in silence, the golden fire in his eyes dimming but never fully gone. Finally, Emma whispered, What does it mean? You said I was marked. His jaw tightened. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and careful. It means you are bound to me, whether you want it or not. Emma's stomach twisted. Bound. The words sank deep, burning into her chest. She wanted to shout, to demand he take it back, but her voice broke before the words could form. Seeing her expression, his eyes softened, but his tone stayed firm. It's not a curse. Not to me, but to you. He paused, shaking his head. It's dangerous, and it will only get worse. The days that followed blurred into a strange rhythm. Emma tried to continue her life, but the edges of normalcy frayed. Shadows lingered where they shouldn't. Strange howls echoed from the woods at night. Sometimes she swore she heard footsteps behind her, only to find the street empty. And always he appeared when the danger pressed too close. Once, when she walked home from the diner, 2 men stepped from the alley, their eyes too pale, their smiles too sharp. Before they reached her, the Alpha emerged from the shadows, his voice deep with warning. The men backed away without a fight, but their gaze on Emma promised it wasn't over. Another night, Emma woke to find her bedroom window open, claw marks scratched into the frame. He was there again, his presence filling the room like a shield. He didn't speak, he didn't need to. She felt safer the moment his eyes found hers. But with each rescue, with each moment, the bond between them tightened. She told herself she hated it. She told herself she wanted him gone. Yet when he wasn't near, the world felt emptier, colder. It wasn't just protection. It was something deeper, more dangerous. When he spoke to her, his voice touched places inside her that she didn't know were waiting to be reached. When he looked at her, it was as though she was the only thing in his world that mattered, and she could feel herself slipping. One evening, as the sky bled into dusk, he came to her door again. His face was tired, his body bruised from a fight she hadn't seen. He didn't ask this time. He simply stood in the doorway, waiting. Emma's chest tightened. She should have closed the door. She should have told him to leave. Instead, she stepped aside. Inside, the silence wrapped around them. He leaned against the wall, his breaths heavy. She noticed his shirt was torn at the sleeve, blood staining the fabric. "You're hurt," she said softly. His eyes flicked to hers, unreadable. "It will heal." "That's not the point." Her voice trembled. She crossed the room, reaching out before she could stop herself. Her fingers brushed his arm, warm against his skin. He tensed, but didn't pull away. Their eyes met. The pull between them was a force neither of them could fight. For a moment, the world shrank until it was just the two of them, standing too close, breathing the same air, hearts pounding in sync. Emma's voice came out in a whisper. "Why does it feel like this?" His jaw tightened. "Because fate doesn't care what we want." Her breath caught. Fate, destiny, words too heavy to ignore. But danger had no patience for tender moments. A knock rattled the window, sharp and sudden. Emma jumped, spinning toward the sound. Outside, in the dim light, pale eyes glowed from the street. The same man she had seen at the diner. The same enemy who had warned her before. He smirked, his voice carrying easily through the glass. "So it's true. You've claimed her." The Alpha moved in front of Emma instantly, his body a wall of fury. "Leave, now." The man only laughed. "You can't hide her forever. She's one of us now, whether she survives it or not." Emma's chest tightened. Fear knotted inside her, but his words pierced deeper than fear. One of us. What did that mean? The Alpha growled, a sound more beast than man, and the pale-eyed stranger melted into the night. Emma turned to him, her voice shaking. "Tell me what he meant. All of it, no more secrets." His face was hard, his shoulders tense. "You wouldn't survive knowing the full truth." Her anger flared. And I won't survive being left in the dark either. For a moment, silence stretched between them, sharp as a blade. His eyes softened, but his voice stayed rough. You don't understand what you're asking. If I give you the truth, you'll never be able to go back. Your life will never be yours again. Emma's heart raced. Maybe it isn't already. Their eyes locked and something passed between them, raw, undeniable, too powerful to name. The days that followed tightened the noose. Enemies circled closer. The pale-eyed man wasn't the only one watching. Strange figures lingered at the edge of town, always vanishing when approached. Emma woke each night from dreams of wolves, her body trembling, her mind burning with his touch, though he had never laid a hand on her. The alpha grew quieter, more guarded. She caught him staring at her when he thought she wasn't looking, his expression torn between hunger and restraint. The bond between them thickened, pulling her closer even as her mind screamed to resist. It all came to a breaking point one night, when she stepped outside and found him waiting, his shoulders tense, his face carved with conflict. You can't stay in this any longer, he said. They won't stop, and the closer you are to me, the more danger you're in. Her throat tightened. Then why don't you walk away? His eyes burned into hers. Because I can't. The words struck her like a flame to dry wood. She felt the truth in them, heavy and terrifying. Emma's body shook with everything she couldn't say. She wanted to run. She wanted to stay. She wanted to surrender. The air between them thickened. The silence charged. Finally, he stepped closer, his voice barely more than a whisper. You have to choose, Emma. Stay away from me and live the life you had before, or step into mine and accept what fate has already written. Her heart thundered, her breath unsteady. 2 choices, 2 worlds. And as she looked into his golden eyes, torn between fear and longing, Emma knew her next decision would change everything. The night pressed heavy around Emily's house. Shadows seemed thicker than usual, clinging to the edges of the room as though they carried secrets. She sat at her kitchen table with a book open before her, though she hadn't read a single word. Her mind was caught between Daniel's warnings and the strange pulse inside her chest that had not left her since their last meeting. Everywhere she went, she felt eyes on her. The woods that once comforted her now seemed alive with whispers. Even in daylight, branches swayed in strange patterns, as if trying to speak a language she could almost understand. Emily rubbed her temples. She was tired, but it wasn't the tiredness of her body, it was something deeper, as if her soul carried weight she didn't recognize. That was when she heard it again. The whisper. It slid through the air like a breeze, brushing against her ear. Her name. Soft, fragile, yet certain. Emily, her breath caught. She turned toward the window, heart racing. Nothing. Only the sway of trees in the pale moonlight. But the sound remained inside her, echoing. She shut the book and stood, her legs shaky beneath her. She needed answers. The world around her was unraveling too fast, and Daniel's presence, his warnings, his confessions was only a piece of a puzzle she didn't understand. The next morning, Emily drove to her mother's house on the far side of town. She hadn't visited in weeks. Her mother, Margaret, lived alone in the small white cottage where Emily had grown up. The sight of it was strange comforting, yet heavy with memories. Margaret opened the door before Emily could even knock. Her mother's eyes were sharp, as though she had been waiting. "You've seen him," Margaret said, not asking but knowing. Emily froze. "Who?" Her mother's lips tightened. "The Alpha." The word cut through the air like a blade. Emily stepped back, confused. "How do you?" Margaret pulled her inside, closing the door firmly behind her. She moved to the living room, Her steps hurried, almost panicked. There are things. I should have told you long ago, Margaret whispered, her hands trembling. Things about our family, about your blood. Emily's heart raced as she followed. Mom, what are you talking about? Margaret sat down heavily on the sofa, her eyes glistening with both fear and regret. Your grandmother was not just an ordinary woman. She belonged to an old line, a line tied to the wolves. Emily shook her head, unable to believe. That's impossible. We're human, her mother's voice cracked. Half human, half something else. You were never meant to know. Not until it became unavoidable. I prayed the bond would never find you. Bond? Emily whispered. Margaret looked at her with sorrow. The pull you feel toward him, it isn't chance. It is written in you, in your blood. The wolves call it mate destiny, but for you, it is even more dangerous. Emily staggered back, her chest tight. All the whispers, the shadows, the way Daniel's presence seemed to burn and comfort her at the same time. It all began to make terrifying sense. You're telling me I was born to this, to him? Margaret nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Your grandmother was bound to a shifter once, though she escaped. I thought I had broken the chain when I married your father. But fate has claws, Emily. It always finds its way back. Emily's throat closed. She wanted to argue, to deny it, but the truth was already clawing its way inside her. She remembered Daniel's words, his struggle, the way he said she didn't understand what she was becoming. Maybe he had known all along. Margaret leaned forward, gripping Emily's hand tightly. You must stay away from him. The Alpha line is dangerous. They destroy what they touch. If you give in, you won't just risk your life, you'll risk your soul. Emily pulled her hand back, shaking her head. Her mother's warning felt too late. The bond was already there. The pull was already strong. I don't think I can, Emily whispered. That night, unable to sleep, Emily walked the woods again. She needed air, space, something that would quiet the storm inside her. But the deeper she went, the louder the storm grew. The whispers returned, stronger now, weaving together in a chorus. Her name, her destiny, her blood. She stumbled into a small clearing where the moonlight spilled silver across the grass. And there at the center stood Daniel. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Not human, not safe. His presence filled the air like thunder, his shoulders tense as though he had been waiting for her. You know, he said softly, Emily's breath caught, about the bond. About what I am. Daniel stepped closer, his expression torn between longing and pain. I tried to protect you from it. I tried to keep it hidden. But fate won't let us go. Emily's pulse hammered in her ears. Everything about him felt dangerous, his stance, his gaze, the raw energy around him. And yet, her body leaned toward him, drawn by something deeper than choice. You knew from the start, she whispered. Didn't you? Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked away, then back at her with eyes that blazed gold. Yes, from the moment I saw you. You're not just human, Emily. You're one of us. And worse, you're mine. The words tore through her like fire and ice at once. Emily staggered, her breath short, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. If it was true, if she really carried this cursed bloodline, then she wasn't just trapped by destiny, she was part of it. And as Daniel's eyes held hers, glowing brighter, with something primal, she realized with a shiver of fear and longing. She didn't know if she wanted to run from him, or run to him. The woods had never felt so alive or so dangerous. After Daniel's confession, Emily could barely breathe without feeling the weight of his words. "You're one of us. You're mine." The sound of them still burned in her chest. She should have run that night, back to her mother, back to safety. But something in Daniel's eyes had held her in place. Something beyond fear, beyond logic. It was a pull she could neither explain nor deny. The next morning, Emily tried to return to her normal life. She dressed for work, made breakfast, packed lunch for her daughter, Lily. But the air inside the house was wrong. Heavy. Watching. Even Lily seemed to notice. "Mommy," Lily whispered as she played with her doll at the kitchen table. "There's a man outside." Emily froze. Slowly, she turned to the window. At first, she saw nothing but the swaying trees. Then between the branches she caught a figure. Tall, dark, waiting. Not Daniel. Her stomach dropped at work. Emily couldn't focus. Every time the phone rang, she jumped. Every shadow seemed to move. When the school called midday to say Lily hadn't shown up to class, Emily's blood turned cold. She drove faster than she ever had, her knuckles white against the wheel. When she reached the schoolyard, relief hit her like a wave. Lily stood safe near the front gate, clutching her backpack. But standing only a few feet away was Daniel. His eyes found Emily instantly. "You can't just take her from school," Emily hissed as she ran to Lily's side, her voice sharp, her heart thundering. Daniel's expression was tense, his jaw tight. Someone was watching her. I had to move her. She wasn't safe. Emily's grip on Lily tightened. "Safe with you? You should have told me first." Daniel's gaze softened for a moment, pain flickering there. "You don't trust me." Emily wanted to answer, but Lily tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, the man from the woods was here. I saw him again." Emily's breath caught. She looked at Daniel, who didn't deny it. His silence said enough. That night, the tension broke wide open. Emily sat across from Daniel in her living room. Lily tucked safely into bed upstairs. The shadows of the firelight danced against his face, making him look both human and otherworldly. "Tell me the truth," Emily whispered. "Who is following us?" Daniel's eyes glowed faintly in the dark. "Not who. What?" Her chest tightened. "They're from another pack," Daniel continued. "Rivals. They've been hunting me for years. Now that they've scented you, they'll use you against me." Emily's voice shook. "Why me?" "Because you're bound to me," he said, his words heavy with meaning. "And because your blood makes you valuable. They know what you are, even if you don't fully understand it yet." Emily's heart pounded in her ears. Every piece of her ordinary life was shattering, replaced by truth she could barely grasp. But one thing was clear: her daughter was in danger. "Then we leave," Emily said quickly. "We pack tonight and go." Daniel's expression turned grim. "It won't matter. They'll follow. The only way to end this is to fight." The days that followed were filled with dread. Emily noticed strangers lingering too long near the grocery store, cars idling outside her street, whispers in the wind that no longer felt like imagination. She kept Lily close, never letting her out of sight. But even inside her own house, Emily felt hunted. One night, the fear became real. Emily woke to the sound of breaking glass. She sat up in bed, her heart racing. Lily's room, she thought of nothing else. She ran, bare feet pounding the hallway floor, only to find the window in Lily's room wide open. Curtains flapped like desperate wings. The bed was empty. "Lily!" Emily screamed, her voice breaking. Strong arms grabbed her before she could leap through the window. Daniel. His grip was firm, his eyes wild. "She's not gone. They tried, but I stopped them." She's safe. And then Emily saw Lily crying, shaking, clinging to Daniel's side. Emily dropped to her knees, pulling her daughter into her arms, her tears falling fast. Relief flooded her, but it was mixed with terror. Someone had been inside the house. Daniel crouched beside her, his hand hovering near her shoulder. This is only the beginning. They won't stop until they have you. Emily looked at him then, her face streaked with tears. And how do I know it isn't you who brought them here? How do I know I can trust you at all? The question cut between them like a blade. Daniel's eyes flared, glowing bright gold. Because I would die before I let them touch you. Emily wanted to believe him. She wanted to fall into his words, into the fierce protection that seemed to burn in him. But trust felt like a fragile glass, already cracked. The next evening, while Lily napped on the couch, Emily stepped outside for air. The woods stood silent, the trees bending under the weight of secrets. That was when she heard it, another voice. A man's voice, low and sharp. You don't belong with him, Emily. She spun around. A figure stepped out from the trees. Tall, cloaked in shadow, his eyes a piercing silver that glowed even brighter than Daniel's gold. You're tied to something greater, the stranger said, his voice smooth, dangerous. But Daniel will only destroy you. He destroyed my pack. He'll destroy you too. Emily's blood ran cold. Who are you? She whispered. The man smiled, but it was a smile without warmth. The one who can save you. Before Emily could speak, Daniel appeared, moving with deadly speed. His body tensed like a storm about to break, his eyes blazing. Stay away from her, Daniel growled. The silver-eyed man only smirked. Or what, Alpha? You'll fail her like you failed the rest. Emily stood frozen, caught between two forces that felt larger than life. Daniel's chest rose and fell with fury, but the stranger's calm was worse. It was cold, certain as if he already held the upper hand. And then, in one smooth motion, the silver-eyed man pointed to the house. Emily's heart stopped. Lily, choose wisely, Emily, he said. Him or your child. The night split open with fear. Emily turned, racing back toward the house, her lungs burning. Behind her, she heard the growl of wolves, the clash of something ancient and brutal beginning. But inside her heart, only one thought screamed. Was Lily safe? The night was broken by the sound of growls, deep and violent, echoing through the woods. Emily's heart pounded as she raced toward the house, her legs weak, her lungs burning. She didn't look back. She didn't dare. Behind her, Daniel's roar split the darkness, clashing against the mocking laugh of the silver-eyed stranger. Inside the house, silence pressed down like a heavy weight. Too much silence. Lily, Emily cried, rushing through the front door, stumbling into the living room. The couch was empty. The blanket lay crumpled on the floor. Her daughter was gone. Emily's knees buckled. A scream tore from her chest, but before it could escape, another voice filled the air. Looking for her? Emily spun. The silver-eyed man stood in the doorway, calm, his hand resting on the frame as if he owned the house. His presence filled the room with a cold that made her skin crawl. Where is she? Emily demanded, her voice breaking. He tilted his head, his silver gaze gleaming. Safe for now, but only if you come with me. Her heart slammed against her ribs. No, I'm not leaving without her. A low growl rolled from outside, followed by the crash of something heavy hitting the ground. Daniel, fighting. The stranger smiled, his voice smooth. Daniel cannot win. He is broken. You felt it, haven't you? His darkness, his secrets. He cannot protect you. He will only drag you down with him. Emily's breath came fast, her chest tight. She wanted to deny him, but doubt had already taken root. She had seen Daniel's rage, the fire in his eyes, the way his words carried both love and danger. "You're lying," she whispered, though her voice shook. The man's smile widened. "Am I? Or has Daniel simply never told you what he's done?" Before Emily could answer, Daniel burst into the room, his body battered, his eyes glowing gold. Blood streaked his jaw, his chest heaving with fury. "Leave her!" Daniel roared. The silver-eyed man didn't move. Instead, he placed a hand over his heart in mock respect. "So noble, so tragic. Tell her the truth, Daniel. Tell her what you did to my pack." Daniel's face twisted, pain flickering across it. His silence was worse than denial. Emily's heart froze. What is he talking about? Daniel's fists clenched, his body trembling with barely contained rage. "It's not what he says." "Then say it," Emily cried, tears filling her eyes. "Tell me the truth." For a moment, Daniel looked at her, his eyes filled with something raw and broken. Then he turned away, unable to speak. The silver-eyed man laughed softly. "You see? Even now he hides from you. He hides because he knows if you knew the whole truth, you would never stand by his side." Daniel lunged, but the rival was faster, slipping into the shadows before the blow could land. His voice echoed from the darkness. "Choose, Emily, him or your daughter. Come to me and she lives. Stay and she suffers his fate." Emily's blood turned to ice. The rival's presence vanished, leaving only silence. But the silence was worse than his taunts, because it carried one truth. Lily was gone. Emily collapsed to her knees, sobbing, her body shaking as Daniel knelt beside her. His hand reached out, trembling, desperate to touch her. "I'll find her," he whispered. "I swear it. I won't let him take her from you." Emily pulled away, her face streaked with tears. "Why should I believe you? You've hidden things from me since the beginning." Daniel's expression twisted with pain. "Because I love you." The words hit her like lightning, powerful, undeniable, but also terrifying. Love wasn't enough. Not now. Not when her daughter's life hung in the balance. She turned her face away, unable to meet his eyes. "I don't need your love, Daniel. I need my daughter." For the first time, Daniel flinched. The hours that followed blurred together. Daniel insisted on tracking the rival's scent, moving through the woods with a speed and ferocity that made Emily struggle to keep up. The night stretched long, the forest endless, every sound a threat. Emily's body ached, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. Every step reminded her of Lily, alone and afraid, somewhere in the hands of a stranger who promised safety but reeked of lies. And yet, the silver-eyed man's words lingered. What did Daniel do to his pack? Why couldn't he answer her? Finally, Daniel stopped. They stood at the edge of a cliff, the moon casting pale light over the valley below. His chest rose and fell, his eyes still glowing faintly. "He's hiding her," Daniel said, his voice low. "Somewhere close. But he's playing a game. He wants to break us first." Emily's throat tightened. "Then tell me the truth, before I lose my mind. What did you do, Daniel?" Daniel's silence stretched. The wind carried it, sharp as glass. Finally, his voice broke through, heavy with regret. "I destroyed them," he whispered. "His pack. Years ago. I had no choice. They were hunting mine. They would have killed everyone I loved. I killed them before they could." Emily staggered, the words hitting her like a blow. "You killed them all?" His eyes lifted to hers, filled with sorrow. "Yes, and I would do it again. Because I will not lose you. Or her. Emily's breath came fast, fear and love crashing inside her like waves. The man she was drawn to, the man who made her heart burn, was also a killer. Before she could speak, a howl rose from the valley below. Long, sharp, triumphant. Daniel stiffened. He's calling. Emily's stomach dropped. She knew, with a certainty that cut deep, this was not over. It was only beginning. They reached the clearing near dawn. Emily's legs were weak, her throat dry. But when she saw Lily standing there, her heart leapt. Her daughter stood near the rival Alpha, who held her hand almost gently. She looked unharmed but pale, her small eyes wide with fear. "Mommy," Lily cried. Emily ran forward, but the rival stepped between them, his silver eyes blazing. One step closer, and she falls. His hand tightening on Lily's shoulder. Daniel growled, his body lowering into a predator's stance. The rival smirked. So predictable. Fight me, and she pays the price. Or surrender, and I let her go. Emily's breath caught. Surrender? What do you mean? The rival's gaze shifted to her, piercing. Come with me. Choose me over him. You carry power in your blood. Emily power wasted on a broken Alpha. Stand at my side, and your daughter lives. The world spun. Her knees trembled. Daniel's voice roared behind her. Don't listen to him. He'll destroy you. The rival's silver eyes glowed brighter. Or maybe I'll set you free. Emily's chest heaved, torn between love and safety, between truth and denial. Her daughter's life hung in the balance, and every second stretched like a blade against her throat. Choose, the rival whispered. Now. Emily's heart pounded, her hands shaking. She opened her mouth to answer, but before she could speak, Lily screamed. The rival's hand tightened, and with a sudden, swift motion, he pulled her into the shadows. They both vanished. Emily's scream tore through the clearing, her knees hitting the earth as Daniel's roar shook the forest. Her daughter was gone. The forest shook with Emily's scream. Her knees pressed into the cold earth, her body trembling as the echo of Lily's cry vanished into the night. The silence that followed was worse than any growl or howl. It was the silence of something stolen, something precious ripped away. Daniel's roar tore through the clearing. He shifted without hesitation, his body twisting, bones cracking, fur spilling across his skin until the massive wolf stood where the man had been. His golden eyes blazed with fury, his growl deep enough to rattle the trees. Emily could barely breathe. Bring her back, she whispered, her voice breaking. Please bring her back. Daniel turned his head, his gaze catching hers for a heartbeat. In those burning eyes, she saw both a promise and a warning. Then he bolted into the shadows, chasing the scent of their enemy. Emily forced herself to her feet. Every instinct screamed at her to run after him, to fight, to claw her way back to her daughter. Her body shook, but her will burned stronger. She would not sit back, not when Lily's life hung in the balance. The forest stretched endless, but Emily ran as though fire carried her. Branches tore at her arms, roots grabbed at her feet, but she didn't stop. The pull in her chest, the strange, thrumming bond she had only begun to understand, dragged her forward. It was like her blood itself knew where Lily was. The howls grew louder, fierce, violent. Then dashed screams. Emily stumbled into a wide clearing lit by moonlight. The rival Alpha stood at its center, his silver eyes blazing. At his side Lily, small and terrified, her hands bound by shadows that seemed alive, twisting around her wrists like smoke. Daniel, in his wolf form, circled them, teeth bared, his fur bristling with rage. The ground trembled beneath his growl. The rival alpha raised a hand, his voice low and sharp. "Come any closer, Daniel, and she dies." Emily's chest burned as she ran forward. "Stop," she cried, her voice breaking. "Please don't hurt her." The silver-eyed man's gaze shifted to her, his smile cruel. "Ah, the mother comes. Good, you are the one I want." Daniel snarled, lunging forward, but the rival flicked his hand. The shadows holding Lily lashed outward, forming a barrier that struck Daniel back. He hit the ground hard, shaking the earth. Emily's heart shattered. Daniel struggled to rise, but the darkness clung to him, burning into his fur like fire. He howled in pain. "Let them go," Emily cried, stepping closer. "Take me instead. Just let them go." The rival's smile widened. At last, reason. But Daniel's growl cut through the air. He forced himself upright, golden eyes blazing. His voice, rough and raw, spilled through the bond between them. Don't give yourself to him." Emily froze. She heard him not with her ears, but inside her. A voice carried by something ancient, deeper than words. Her breath caught. Was this what it meant to be bound? The rival alpha's voice sliced through the moment. "He can't save you, Emily. He can't save your child. He failed before, and he will fail again. But with me, your bloodline will be more than prey. You will be power itself." Emily's pulse pounded. The air thickened, the shadows pressing closer. Lily sobbed, her small voice like a knife through Emily's chest. "Mommy, please." Emily's heart broke in two. She looked at Daniel, broken and bleeding, yet still standing. His eyes locked on hers, fierce, desperate. He had hidden things, yes. He had blood on his hands. But in his eyes she saw truth raw, painful but real. And in that moment, she understood. The bond wasn't about chains. It wasn't about destiny forcing her hand. It was about choice. Her blood might carry fate, but her heart carried love. Emily stepped forward, lifting her chin. Her voice was steady now, clear despite the tears on her face. "You want me? Then take me, but let my daughter go." Daniel roared, thrashing against the shadows, but they only tightened, burning deeper. His howl carried pain and fury. The rival alpha tilted his head, intrigued. "So noble. Perhaps you truly are worth binding." He reached out a hand, the shadows around Lily loosening slightly. But as Emily stepped closer, fire surged in her chest. It burned brighter, hotter, until she could barely stand. Her vision blurred. Her skin glowed faintly, silver lines tracing across her arms like lightning. The rival froze, his eyes widening. Daniel stopped struggling. Staring in shock, Emily gasped as power filled her veins, heavy and wild. She stumbled but didn't fall. Something inside her had awakened, something buried deep, something older than either alpha. "You," the rival whispered. "You're not just bound. You are the blood of prophecy." Emily's breath came in short, sharp bursts. She didn't understand, but she didn't need to. The power was hers, and she would use it. She raised her hand, and the shadows snapped. They recoiled like struck serpents, releasing Lily. The little girl fell forward, running into Emily's arms. Emily clutched her close, trembling with relief. The rival alpha snarled, his silver eyes blazing with fury. "Impossible!" Daniel roared, breaking free from the fading shadows, lunging at his enemy with teeth bared. The two wolves clashed in an explosion of fury, gold against silver. Fire against ice. The ground shook beneath their battle, trees splintering. The air filled with snarls and howls. Emily shielded Lily. her body trembling as she watched the two forces collide. For a moment it seemed Daniel was winning, his golden light burning brighter. But the rival was ruthless, his strikes sharp and merciless. And then Daniel faltered. The rival's claws tore deep across his side. Daniel stumbled, blood soaking his fur, his golden eyes dimming. "Daniel!" Emily screamed. He fell to the ground, his body trembling. The rival stood over him, silver eyes blazing with triumph. "It ends here," the rival growled. Emily's blood turned to fire. She placed Lily gently behind her, her hands glowing brighter now, silver light streaming from her fingertips. "Then it ends with me," she whispered. The rival's head snapped toward her, his eyes narrowing in a flash. Emily released the power inside her. Silver light exploded across the clearing, striking the rival with a force that sent him crashing backward. His scream tore through the air, furious and pained. The shadows writhed and vanished. Swallowed by the light, the clearing fell silent, except for Lily's sobs and Daniel's labored breaths. Emily collapsed to her knees, her body shaking, her vision fading. The power drained her, every part of her trembling with exhaustion. Daniel, bleeding and broken, shifted back into his human form. He crawled toward her, his hand trembling as it reached for hers. "You saved us," he whispered, his voice weak but full of awe. Emily met his gaze, her eyes wet with tears. "No, we saved each other." But before he could answer, the rival's voice hissed from the shadows. "This is not over." Emily turned, her heart freezing. The rival Alpha was gone, but his words lingered, heavy and cold. And in that silence, Emily knew the battle wasn't finished. The night had given her victory, but at a cost she did not yet understand. The night after the battle felt endless. The forest was quiet, too quiet, as if the trees themselves mourned what had been lost. The moonlight spilled silver across the clearing where Emily sat, holding Lily against her chest. Her daughter had finally fallen asleep, her breathing soft and even, but Emily could not rest. Her body ached, her heart heavier still. She looked to Daniel, lying only a few feet away. He was weak, his side still marked by the rival's claws. Yet even broken, he looked powerful, his presence pulling at her soul. Emily could still feel the echo of the power that had erupted from her. It hummed faintly under her skin, like an ember that refused to go out. She did not understand it fully, this prophecy, this bloodline, but she knew it had changed her forever. The danger had passed for now. But peace did not come easily. Daniel stirred, groaning softly as he tried to sit up. His bare chest was streaked with blood and dirt, but his eyes, golden even in the dim light, still burned with life. Emily rushed to his side. "Don't move. You're hurt." He gave a weak smile. "I've been worse." His voice was rough, yet laced with something gentle. His gaze fell on Lily, asleep in Emily's arms. A strange softness filled his expression. "She's safe. That's all that matters." Emily swallowed hard, her throat tight. "We almost lost her. We almost lost everything." Daniel reached out, his trembling fingers brushing against Emily's hand. "But we didn't because of you." She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I don't even know what I am anymore." "You're the woman who saved us," he whispered. "The woman fate tried to break but couldn't." His words wrapped around her like a promise, but deep inside, doubt still twisted. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe in them. But trust, once shaken, did not return so easily. The days that followed were slow, heavy with silence. Daniel healed, though scars remained across his side. Emily stayed close, caring for Lily, watching over Daniel, all while trying to make sense of the power inside her at night. She often walked alone beneath the trees, the wind whispering secrets she didn't yet understand. Sometimes she felt the shadows of the rival Alpha still lingering, watching, waiting. His words haunted her. This is not over. And yet, in those same woods, she found strength. The bond she shared with Daniel was no longer a mystery. It was dangerous, yes, complicated, but it was also real. And real things, she knew, were worth fighting for. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the horizon, Emily sat beside Daniel. Lily played nearby, her laughter like a fragile miracle after so much fear. Daniel broke the silence first. You should know the truth. Emily turned to him, her heart bracing. I was afraid to tell you before, he continued, his voice low. Afraid you'd hate me. Afraid you'd run. His hands clenched around the earth. I've done things, Emily. Things I'm not proud of. Blood has stained my hands. Enemies will always come for me. For us. If you stay, your life will never be safe. Emily looked at him, studying the pain etched into his face. She saw the wolf and the man, the sinner and the savior. She saw the broken pieces and the strength holding them together. She reached for his hand, steady and sure. My life was never truly safe before you. But with you, at least I know what I'm fighting for. Daniel's golden eyes softened, filling with something raw and unguarded. For the first time, he let out a shaky breath, as if releasing years of guilt he had carried alone. The weeks stretched on. Slowly wounds closed. Shadows retreated. And though Emily knew the rival Alpha would return someday, she also knew she wouldn't face him as the same woman she once was. She was stronger now. Not because of prophecy, not because of fate, but because she had chosen to stand, even when fear tried to crush her. Her bond with Daniel deepened in small, quiet ways. In the way he stayed near Lily, patient and gentle, though his eyes always carried the weight of a predator learning softness. In the way Emily allowed herself to lean on him, not as prey to protect her, but as equals bound by choice. There were nights they spoke of dreams, of what life could be beyond the fight. And though uncertainty always lingered, hope began to grow like a fragile seed in the ashes of their pain. One night, under a sky full of stars, Daniel took her hand. I used to believe love was a weakness, he admitted. His thumb brushed against her skin, warm and careful. That caring made you vulnerable. That's what I was taught. That's how I survived. Emily's breath caught. But then you walked into my world, he continued. His voice cracked slightly, the words heavy with truth. You who should have feared me most saw something worth saving. And for the first time, I wanted to be more than what I was. Emily's heart ached, full and fragile. Tears shimmered in her eyes. She whispered back, and I used to think love was something I had to lock away, that it was too dangerous, too costly. But with you, I can't lock it away anymore. Not when it feels like the only thing that's real. Daniel leaned forward, his forehead resting against hers. For a long moment, neither spoke. Their hearts, their breaths, their silences, all of it was enough. The war was not over. The rival Alpha was still out there. Shadows still stirred. But the story had shifted. Emily was no longer the frightened woman who once opened her door to a stranger. She was no longer just a mother caught in a storm she didn't understand. She was fire and blood, choice and strength. And Daniel was no longer the lonely wolf, cursed by his past. He was something more because she had seen the man beneath the beast and refused to turn away. Together, they were no longer running from destiny. They were walking into it. As dawn broke one morning, Emily stood at the edge of the forest, Lily's hand in hers. Daniel came to stand beside them, his presence warm, steady, The rising sun painted the sky in shades of gold and rose. The world, though scarred, seemed alive with possibility. Emily squeezed Lily's hand, then Daniel's. Her voice was soft but certain. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Daniel looked at her, his golden eyes reflecting the light of the new day. For once, there was no shadow, no fear, only truth. And with that, Emily understood. They had lost much peace, innocence, certainty. That they had gained something far greater. Love that had been tested in fire. A bond forged in truth. A future unwritten. But theirs to claim. As the sun climbed higher, chasing away the last of the night, Emily breathed deeply. Her heart steady. It was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a new one.